The Achaemenid Empire, the world's first information superpower.
If you, like us, are fascinated by the hidden forces that shape our world, then do us a favor. Subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss a discovery.
Stay with us until the end of this video. This is a fascinating scientific investigation, presented to you with a powerful story, brought to you by Persian Fact.
All right, let's jump right in. When you think of the ancient Persian Empire, the Achaemenids, what's the first image that pops into your head? For most of us, it's all about pure, overwhelming spectacle. You know, we picture the absolutely monumental columns of Persepolis, a city designed to just radiate power. We think of the legendary conquests of Cyrus the Great, the brilliant reforms of Darius I, the colossal campaigns of Xerxes, and, of course, who could forget the Immortals, that seemingly invincible elite army? That's the empire of legend, right? But here's the thing. Armies and palaces can conquer territory, sure, but they can't hold together an empire that spanned 3 continents for over 200 years. That takes something else entirely. So, what was the real secret to their astonishing control? Well, the answer is, it's a lot less flashy and a whole lot more revolutionary than you might think. You see, their greatest secret wasn't carved into some grand stone monument for all to see. No, it was buried, forgotten in the ruins. A secret that would completely rewrite how we understand ancient power, hidden in the most humble material imaginable. Believe it or not, the true bedrock of their imperial power was clay. Yep, just simple, ordinary clay. Back in the 1930s, down in the ruins of Persepolis, archaeologists stumbled upon an archive of over 30,000 of these little clay tablets. And this wasn't some royal library filled with epic poems. Oh no, it was something infinitely more important. You see, these tablets were the empire's hard drive, its operating system. They were the day-to-day, nitty-gritty records of a gigantic administrative machine. Ration accounts, travel orders, sealed authorizations, who got what grain, where work crews were needed, the whole shebang. And when you piece it all together, you get this stunning revelation. The Achaemenids didn't just conquer people. They managed complexity on a scale the world had literally never seen before. They weren't just a military superpower. They were an information superpower. So how in the world did this system actually work? Let's peel back the first layer of this data-driven world. It all came down to what you could call governance by the calorie. The Persians basically perfected what we might call a caloric economy. Now, don't mistake this for simple barter. This was a highly sophisticated system. The state managed its workers and kept the peace by precisely controlling the flow of energy. That is, food and drink, like grain, wine, and beer. They knew a fundamental truth. A well-fed empire is a stable empire. I mean, what we're looking at here is essentially workforce analytics, but from 500 BCE. The level of detail is just staggering. Rations were doled out with incredible precision, based on your job and your rank. They tracked whole work crews and even adjusted payments for family size. And maybe the most amazing part? The records show women in powerful administrative roles, receiving rations that match their high-status positions. Okay, but with millions of these transactions happening across a massive territory, how did they stop corruption? How did you secure a data network in an age without computers? Well, the answer was a kind of ancient cryptography, etched in stone. The process itself was brilliant and surprisingly simple. First, a scribe writes down the transaction on a fresh, wet clay tablet. Next, an authorized official checks the details. And then that official takes their own personal seal, a totally unique, intricately carved stone, and presses it into the clay. That impression was the final unbreakable authorization. So think about what's really happening here. In a world without passwords or two-factor authentication, these little seals did it all. They provided authentication, proving you are who you say you are. They created accountability because every payment was now tied to a specific official. And it gave the whole system traceability. It was a genius, low-tech solution to a very high-stakes problem. So they had the data and they had the security. But how did they actually move all this information across thousands of kilometers to keep a continent-sized empire in sync? Simple. They built the ancient world's internet. The Greek historian Herodotus was just in awe of the Persian courier system. He wrote this famous line, you've probably heard it, it inspired the motto of the U.S. Postal Service. This incredible relay network of riders and stations meant that official orders and data tablets could cross the empire with unbelievable speed and reliability.
The famous Royal Road, stretching over 2,500 kilometers, it wasn't just built for armies and merchants. No, its real strategic value was communication. It was the physical bandwidth that carried all the data needed to run the empire. A decision made in the capital could be acted on hundreds of miles away in just a matter of days. So when you put all of these pieces together, the data gathering, the stone seal security, the high-speed delivery network, an astonishingly modern picture starts to form. The Persians understood, deep in their bones, a very modern truth. Data is destiny.
And look at this comparison. This isn't just a fun metaphor. This structural similarity is uncanny. The thousands of clay tablets, those are database entries. The personal seals of officials, those are basically digital signatures. The Royal Road, that's their fiber optic network. The huge central archives, those are their data centers. Even the regional governments, the satrapies, acted like distributed servers. They built an analog cloud.
And that really brings us to the heart of it. The Achaemenid Empire lasted for over 2 centuries, not just because of its fearsome army. It thrived because it mastered data. Their true weapon wasn't the immortals, it was information discipline.
They proved a principle that is more true today than ever before. Whoever controls the information controls the empire. And that leaves us with a pretty big question for our own time, doesn't it? In our digital age, with our own vast networks of information, who is building the empires of tomorrow?
It was an engine built not of iron or steel, but of something far more powerful, far more enduring. It was an engine of trust. You see, this is the fundamental equation of empire, and it's an equation that the Achaemenid Persians mastered in a way the world had simply never seen before. They built something that outlasted armies and walls. They engineered trust.
The true genius of the Persian Empire wasn't simply its conquests. It was the construction of a predictable economic order on a scale that was completely unprecedented.
And right there, that's the crucial difference. Before the Persians, the relationship between power and wealth was often chaotic, violent, and purely extractive. The Achaemenids didn't just administer an empire. They fundamentally reshaped the economic philosophy of their time, moving beyond mere plunder to something far more sophisticated.
Now, this required a radical shift in strategy, a whole new philosophy of empire. It meant abandoning the brutal, short-sighted models of the past for something that was actually designed to last.
The old logic was one of extraction, basically a smash-and-grab approach that ultimately exhausts the very lands it conquers. The Persian innovation was integration. They didn't aim to destroy existing economic systems, they aimed to absorb them, to become the stable framework within which everyone else could operate.
And you can see exactly how this worked. Instead of raising Babylonian temples, they recognized them for what they were, economic hubs. Instead of replacing Egyptian priesthoods, they allowed them to continue managing agricultural lands. They didn't impose a single model on everyone. They coordinated diverse local economies, creating a system that was both centralized and flexible, almost like a kind of early federal economics.
So, how did they actually build this trust? Well, it rested on 3 powerful pillars that formed the core of the Persian economic engine. And the first was nothing short of a revolution in political branding.
This is where Darius I comes in. He introduced the gold daric and the silver siglos. And you have to understand, this was so much more than just economic convenience. Every single coin, stamped with the image of the king, was a piece of portable propaganda. It was a tangible symbol of the empire's stability and a state-backed guarantee of value that could be trusted from the shores of Greece all the way to the banks of the Indus. It unified economic perception across thousands of miles.
And that right there, that is the psychological masterstroke. Every single transaction using this currency wasn't just a trade of goods, it was a small-scale reinforcement of the empire's power and its predictability. It was, in effect, a daily vote of confidence in the Persian system.
The second pillar was the connection of previously separate economic worlds. For the first time ever, the Mediterranean basin, the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, and the markets of the Indus Valley were all linked within a single, stable political framework. This created an unprecedented level of intercontinental circulation, and not just of goods, but of shared economic expectations.
The third pillar is one that's often misunderstood. You see, Persian religious tolerance wasn't simply an act of enlightened benevolence. It was economically rational. Temples were major landowners, employers, and centers of production. Destroying them would have crippled local economies and invited rebellion. So by protecting them, Persia preserved economic continuity and stabilized its own tax base. It was just smart policy.
With these pillars in place, the Persians operated a macroeconomic system of remarkable stability and resilience.
And this system reframed the very nature of imperial spending. The immense consumption of the royal court, the massive building projects like Persepolis, these weren't merely displays of luxury, they were a form of economic stimulus. This spending generated widespread employment for artisans, laborers, and engineers, pumping imperial funds right back into the provincial economies and preventing stagnation. It was almost a proto-Keynesian logic at work.
This intelligent design extended even to taxation. The empire didn't apply a one-size-fits-all rate. Instead, tribute was carefully calibrated to what each region could actually produce and pay, a sophisticated balance that was crucial for preventing the revolts that plagued other empires.
And the result of this entire system? Over 2 centuries of macroeconomic stability. Now, in the ancient world, that level of continuity was an absolutely extraordinary achievement. It was a testament to an economic architecture that was truly built to endure.
But of course, this stability faced the ultimate test when the empire fell. When Alexander the Great stood as conqueror over the vast Persian domain, he had a choice. He could have dismantled the entire structure, but he didn't. So the question is, why not?
He kept the system because, frankly, it was superior to anything the Greek world had devised for managing a territory of that scale. He kept the satrapies, the tax structures, and the trade corridors. The Persian economic model had outlived Persian political rule. And that is the true measure of its power.
The empire itself is long gone, of course, but its invisible blueprint, you could call it its economic DNA, has echoed down through history. When we talk about state-backed currency, continent-spanning trade zones, or even using policies of tolerance to ensure social and economic stability, we are speaking a language with Achaemenid roots. These concepts, which form the very bedrock of modern states, were first tested and proven at scale by the Persians.
What the Persians did was engineer a profound transformation. They shifted the very definition of empire, from conquest to coordination, from arbitrary tribute to structured taxation, from isolated markets to a continental system unified by a common currency that was just as much a psychological tool as it was an economic one.
The greatness of the Achaemenid Empire lay in a deep understanding that military force alone is fleeting. Sustainable power is built on a foundation of predictable prosperity, and that prosperity can only be built on a bedrock of trust. They engineered that trust at a scale that changed the world. And it leaves us with a final question. Their empire was built on this invisible economic architecture. What then is the invisible architecture that underpins the global systems of our own time?